Hello and welcome back to So You Got a Life Sci Degree. We're your hosts, Farida and Lisa, two life sci undergrad students trying to navigate our future careers. This is episode 11, and we're talking to Jared Kunar about working at the Science, Career, and Cooperative Education Office at McMaster University. How are you doing today, Lisa?
How am I doing? Well, for anyone who watches Community, there's that episode where Troy goes to get a pizza and then he comes back and then the whole apartment is just on fire.
Classic meme.
And then, yeah, it's been made into a meme. So if you don't know the episode, you at least know the meme where it's that guy holding a pizza box and like the apartment is just burning. People are running all over the place. There's like an evil version of his friends around.
Yeah.
And like
it's my favorite episode, I think.
Yeah, I've been meaning to maybe rewatch some of it. But there's like this one meme where it's like you move something like 1 centimeter on Microsoft Word, and then it's like in the distance sirens kind of thing. And so I feel like that's just me right now with my whole email situation, because I finally decided, because it was the break and everything, that I was going to change my email kind of organizing tool app kind of thing, because I've always just used the standard app on the phone and kind of like the email app that comes with the Mac laptop.
Right.
But then I remember you told me about how you can like do things like schedule emails. And I was like, what? You can do that? And you can, after you send an email, if it was a mistake, you can unsend the email. And you can't do any of those things on the built-in app. Actually, like the Gmail app is a lot better for those things. And so I finally decided I was going to switch. And I just feel like everything is chaos. Like, I don't know. I spent like 30 minutes the other day just trying to figure out how to send an email from my McMaster email. And it was just so hard. It was just, yeah. I don't know what it is. I'm just like, I'm so used to it, you know? And then, yeah. And so that's why when we had to send the link to our guest, it took me like 5 minutes, because I was like, where's the reply button? Why is there images? I'm so confused.
Welcome to the 2000s, Lisa.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but also isn't it all just like automatically set up? It's not like you're configuring specific options.
I know, but it's like, I mean, do you really want me to get into the details of email? Like, I had to add our podcast email and my McMaster email as like aliases.
Okay.
I'm gonna get made fun of for how I'm pronouncing that word. Whatever, on my Gmail, and it's just
okay. Just havoc, I guess.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like the whole meme with the Microsoft Word thing that you were saying earlier, that really applies to when you're making resumes on Word.
Oh yeah.
It's just like you move one thing and you have no idea how to like.
Oh yeah. Or if you copy something from Word into Google Docs,
or
vice versa.
Terrible.
my bioinformatics prof, he makes everything in Microsoft Word, but then I copy it from Microsoft Word into Google Docs, and it's just like none of the DNA reads are lined up. Like, all the charts are wrong, and I'm like going through like left and right trying to like fix everything. So, yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I started school again technically today.
I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Today is Friday, right? Yeah, I'm starting on Monday, but you already started, which is weird, on a Thursday?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. But outside of school, I'm actually taking another course.
You are?
Yeah, so I've been hiding this for like a little bit, and I've been almost saying this for like a month.
I was just about to say, like, how could you not tell me?
Yeah, it's an intentional decision.
Oh my god.
So I don't know if you watched Mark Rober's second to last video, where he announced that he was running a creative engineering course.
What?
Yeah, so I'm taking that course.
What? Wait, how many people are in it?
I don't actually know, because it doesn't say, but there's like groups, and I think there's like 20 people in my group. But I don't know how many groups there are in total, so I have no idea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
really cool. Yeah,
what
it's
on earth?
exciting.
So Mark Rober is like your, I guess, kind of like a prof to you? That's so weird. Can you communicate directly with him?
I mean, I don't really think so. Like, he does comment on certain posts sometimes, and you can see the ones that he comments on and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's mostly like you interact with your group, and some people are pretty advanced in their group, so they try to.
So you don't have a group lead or anything, like a TA kind of thing. It's kind of just like you lead yourselves.
I think the groups are intentionally mixed so that some people can help other people who have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. How do you rate yourself on the idea of what you're doing scale, 1 to 10?
I'm on the no idea what I'm doing scale side of things.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but he actually he makes it very accessible, and like you can tell he has very thought
Cool.
out processes for everything,
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
great.
not actually that difficult to follow.
That's cool. What's one of the projects you're working on?
So the coffee pots that I buy, they're like every time I drink one, I get hyper and then I crash and I'm tired for the rest of the day.
When you made that CR sound, I thought you were gonna say cry.
Coffee does not make me cry.
Mm.
So I think I'm gonna try to make like a coffee portioner, like it gives the same amount of coffee every day so that I don't, and that amount, I'm gonna run it some experiments so that that amount aligns to how much I actually need.
Ladies and gentlemen, our very own Farida solving world problems one at a time.
Yeah, the issue is that there's some constraints on what we can build, so it has to be like technically all the ideas I really wanted to do involved a little bit of programming, which we weren't allowed to do for the first project.
Oh, I see.
And also it has to be something that I can actually make, which is very close to nothing. So
I made this cookie catcher for you.
yeah. So we're taking baby steps. It's not like a genius idea. It's just something to work with. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's cool. That's cool. Wow, look at you go. That's a commitment right there.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun.
Mhm. I mean, speaking of school, today we have a guest who's from my school, who's from McMaster University itself. It is Jared Kunar, and I'm pretty excited to talk to him. He seems like a cool person. We were emailing before, and he was telling us about his adopted dog with one missing leg and how he was taking it on a walk to make it calm for the podcast. So, yes, he's not on here yet, so we'll see if we hear any snuffling when he comes on.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Jared is currently the Career Development and Relationship Manager at the Science, Career, and Cooperative Education Office, otherwise known as the SCCE at McMaster University. He helps students develop job search techniques, create targeted resumes and cover letters, and improve their interview skills. He is known as the Sweet Prince of Career Services and an overall cool guy. Jared completed his bachelor's degree in life sciences at McMaster University. He then became a certified human resources professional through taking courses at McMaster University and Mohawk College. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jared.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's super cool to chat with you. I understand you're known around Mac as a pretty friendly guy, so we thought you'd be a pretty good guest for this podcast. And to start us off, we were wondering if you could just describe what your job is. What does a career development and relationship manager do?
Yeah, it's one of those like giant fancy titles that probably doesn't need to be that giant in the first place. But really what it comes down to is it's helping students try to help find their way, right? And talking about their futures. So it is like kind of we mentioned in that intro. So a lot of like the resumes, the cover letters, the job searching, but it's also then sitting there and talking just how do we go from where you are right now to where you want to go and any barriers in between. So it's really trying to sort that piece out. And on top of that, it's also working with our co-op programs that we have in science at McMaster. So it's really, let's find new opportunities. Let's talk about how do we get good co-op opportunities and essentially just running that program. So it's a little bit of a combination of both and kind of I'm in there right in the middle. And right now I'm looking at just seeing if we can come up with some new programming to maybe modernize some of our services, try to get into the hands of more students. So I got some things that I'm working on behind the scenes right now to see if I can make a couple changes going forward.
So being like a manager at the SCCE, do you still spend a lot of your time working one-on-one with students, or, do you spend your time more so kind of organizing these programs and deciding what the office is going to do moving forward?
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a hybrid. And it's because I just recently came off of doing like a little bit of like an interim manager position where I was completely kind of in charge of the office. But right now I've kind of just slid back into my old role as we hired somebody as a director. So I'm doing a little bit more of those student conversations now, but still at the same time, I think I'm in a little bit of a transition period. So I get to still work on some of these bigger projects behind the scenes. So I'm kind of like right in the middle of everything right now. So it's actually kind of interesting because, yeah, you get to see like this is where we're going to go in the future, but also still get that contact. And that's the part that I love. I love talking to the students. So
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, which one do you like more?
yeah, I mean, they both have their perks, but I think what really drives me every day is still being able to talk to the students. And if I lost that, I don't know what I'd ever do. It's just one of those things that I like so much. And I teach Science 2C00.
Oh yeah, yeah, I took that with you.
Yeah, and I will never give. Well, I guess I shouldn't say never give it up, but
This is mine.
you can't take it away from me. No, but yeah, I love it so much. So it's one of those things that, yeah, somebody would have to wrestle it out of my hands to not go into like one class. So
For us non-McMaster folk, can you just explain what that course is?
yeah, for sure, that would make a lot of sense. So it's Science 2C00. So it's basically building a foundation for careers. So we talk about, I mean, it's the basics, the resumes, the cover letters, job searching, interview skills, just a little bit about, how do you manage your professionalism at work. So it's just like a good intro to those subjects.
That sounds really cool. At McGill, usually that responsibility just falls amongst the various profs, and some of them take that up and some of them don't. So it's nice to hear that there's actually like a concentrated way that McMaster students get to learn that. Yeah, and I was wondering for you, Jared, you mentioned that you like talking to students, but I just want to know more about the nitty-gritty of what an average day of work looks like for you. So like what time do you arrive and leave, and how many hours do you work, and do you have a lunch break? What happens on a daily schedule?
Yeah, I guess every day is always a little bit different, but my standard schedule is at 8:30 to 4:30. I get that lovely like 1 hour lunch break. Whether or not I can actually take it or not, I think technically I get two 15-minute breaks and a 1 hour lunch break. So
well done.
yeah, I'm living the dream at this point. But yes, it's just a matter of whether or not you get to take it. But yeah, and it's a variety of different things. So some days it might be, and this is kind of going back a little bit, like my days used to be like appointments. So I've done drop-in hours for like a morning and then do appointments in the afternoon. Other days, it might be looking at co-op. So then it's contacting employers, figuring out where students can go. And then more currently right now, it's doing a lot of like research, reading, finding best practices, a lot of communication to go back and forth with whether it's stakeholders or people who have done like really cool things with careers. And it's just trying to figure out, I guess, where I can go from there. So there's a lot of digging around, a lot of contact these days.
Okay, I don't know if this is just me not knowing things, but what exactly do stakeholders look like in the office that you work in?
Yeah, stakeholders is a good question. So that would just be essentially anybody that would be impacted by our programming or wants impact from our programming. So I could look at somebody like grad studies in general, right? Like they could be a stakeholder, could be some of our employers, could be like university advancement, so like the fundraising that goes on behind the scenes. So it's lots of different people. I mean, the way I think of it, all of us in science are kind of working towards a common goal at the end of the day, and it's like for undergrad it's all about like education, right? But there's different ways that we can interact with each other to help each other out with our own small little goal so that the rest of science kind of moves forward with it. So those are the people that would be kind of my stakeholders.
That makes a lot of sense. It actually sounds like you wear a lot of different hats and get to do a lot of different things in your role. Are there any challenging aspects to your work?
Yeah, I think, kind of the biggest challenge is that this is probably tough to hear as a student for sure, but we are underfunded in our office, which does, prevent us from being able to do like big expansion projects, really kind of get out there. So we have to be more aggressive with, looking for funding, whether it's from the university or external grants to bring in to do some of these cool little projects. So that's always one of those things. And we're a small team. We're a small but mighty team, and that's for sure. But sometimes you just need hands, right? And
Right.
that's sometimes where I find we have a little bit of trouble. And the other thing is just we genuinely care about the students. I think it's one of those, like especially our office in general, is one of those places where even if you came to us with the wrong question and like the wrong department, we'll still find a way to make sure you need or you get what you came for, even if it ends up being a referral. But we never have that like, no, sorry, I just can't help you, so go somewhere else kind of attitude. So I usually say like that's a super like big positive from us, but it also ends up being kind of one of our biggest burdens as well, because like, yeah, if you came into our office and just said like, please help me, somebody's going to drop everything they're doing and just like, okay, let's figure it out. So
Aw.
yeah.
Someone's like, where's the pizza place? And you're like, I'll walk you there.
Well, yeah, then we'll have a big discussion about, well, what kind of pizza, we'll find the right one for you.
Talking a bit more about you, I guess, and why you chose to, study life sci and then transition into kind of more of this career stuff. If you think back to, 17, 18-year-old Jared, why did you or he choose to study life sci? And like, what were you thinking about your career at the time when you entered at Mac?
Yeah, I guess my whole career path has been a giant mistake, but a giant wonderful mistake. But so I
Oh.
yeah, and this is okay. This is the message everybody needs to hear. I came to Mac actually because of a course that I took in high school, and it was just like an extra course where they sent me to. I was sent to Ottawa U. I grew up in Ottawa, so I went there. There was this course where there's a psychiatrist that trained at McMaster, and he was teaching it, and I like loved what he had kind of developed and delivered during those like his quick seminar day, like 3 or 4 days or something like that. And he went to McMaster, and I was pretty much sold at that point. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to Mac. And science was just because like I love science, and I couldn't really see myself doing anything else. And it's just what I was good at. It was kind of one of those, like, I didn't really need to study science. I didn't need to. What we're going to slowly find out here, I'm sure, is that I was an awful student and I did everything. So this will be a cautionary tale to anybody that's listening. But yeah, I didn't have to study for tests. It didn't take me long to write assignments. So I was just like, this is kind of easy and like makes sense to me. So let's just keep doing that, because if it's easy, then I should just keep doing it. So there's, as you could probably tell, there's not a lot of thought put into it. It just felt right at the time. But yeah, and that's kind of how I ended up at Mac. And in life science, if I go that particular, because I stayed in life science through my whole undergrad, I'll be honest, I didn't have the grades. So I was one of those students that, like you have to apply in second year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just didn't quite have the exact cutoff to get in. I was actually looking for one of the psych programs.
Oh, like PMB kind of thing.
Yeah, PMB. Yeah. So I didn't have the cutoff to make it. So I just kind of stuck it out in life science. And I just kind of worked through kind of shadowing some of the courses. I mean, still doing what everybody else did, where, you're taking organic chem, genetics. Yeah, just because you're supposed to. I think that's the kind of the rule on at least through the students. You're just supposed to take those classes and go through that pain. But yeah. If you want to know about Orgo, I can talk about Orgo too. But yeah, so I never quite got to exactly where I wanted to go. So I just stuck it out in life science. So doing all those labs, like the organic chemistry, I don't remember what else their labs I was taking, but it was every time I had to do one, I was just like, why am I here? Right? Like I started to realize like I actually hated being in the lab. And as like my tangent here is that I also had like this sinus problem.
Oh,
So like I would put goggles on, and then like 20 minutes into a 3-hour lab, like I'm just in an immense pain, because like
Aw.
you're bordering on that migraine type thing. So it's just like, clearly why I'm not gonna like enjoy this lab, because like it just felt awful.
Even as someone who doesn't have any health issues to deal with additionally, just like not drinking water and being in a lab for like 4 hours, not fun.
Yeah.
Exactly. Eventually I got my sinuses all like cut out and sorted, and then I was like, now it's great. But it started at that point where it's just like, that's just another obstacle that I ran into. So I kind of said like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. And I didn't want to do the labs anymore. So I was like, okay, well, let me just take some like additional psych courses. I did like them. They weren't too lab heavy, especially under the life science banner, because you're blocked out of like a lot of the more research based things. So I took them, and I was like, for the most part, I liked them. But what I found is there was like a lot of like the motivation and emotion type stuff that I was looking at, where it was like, this is genuinely interesting for me. So I started to think, it's like, okay, well, what can I actually do with this? And I thought, okay, well, maybe what I'll end up doing is a little bit more business, because like that motivation and emotion, where it started kind of piquing my interest, was like, how can we do it in a business setting? So how can I get people to essentially do what I need them to do at work with some sort of reward, right? And whether, I mean, a lot of times it's just like, here's a boatload of money and go do your job. And it's like awesome. But it's actually, yeah, it's far more complicated than that. So I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to go do. And it's basically, there's these programs out there called industrial and organizational psychology. So I thought, okay, well, let me go out and apply to a couple of those master's programs and see where it takes me. But if we cycle back a second, it's just my grades, right? They weren't that great. I mean, towards the end, like everything kind of picked back up and I was kind of in around that like B- ish range, but kind of the track record to that may have not been great. So I actually didn't get into the programs that I wanted to. So all of a sudden, you know, I'm at the end of my fourth year and I'm going, okay, so now you're not into your program that you wanted. Now you have to kind of figure out what you're doing with your life and like how do you get there. So it took me a little bit of time to start sorting things out. I still took a couple extra courses at Mac, but around like the winter when I was in my fifth year, because I was just taking extra courses, I kind of turned around and said, okay, you know what it has to be? I have to start working towards HR. That's the only thing that makes sense to me, because if I want to do industrial organizational psychology, it's a branch of HR when we start talking about like at work. So I was like, okay, let me take some courses at Mohawk. So I started doing those, and then started really kind of aggressively trying to pursue work in that area. But me about 6 months into that, still not landing a job. And it was kind of tough at that point. And I said, okay, like I need a little bit of help here. Like there's got to be something that I'm doing wrong because, you know, I'm job searching for 6 months. I'm a new grad. Like I should have the skills to get into something. So I ended up going to just like a local, like an employment help center. And I ended up, I mean, I did a resume with somebody. It was the worst and awful experience. So that always sticks in my mind. But they said, you know what, you go talk to one of our advisors and we'll book you an appointment so you can come back in and do it. So I said, sure. Anyway, so I worked with her for quite some time. She's actually very good. And she basically told me, like, I'm doing a lot of things right, but it's just not quite working out and it's just not lucking out for some reason. And eventually she just said, like, okay, there's this job at one of our sister locations just out in Burlington. I can get you an interview if you want to go. And it's just putting you in an employment help center, but you're going to be kind of really that front facing person. So you're going to do like really basic resume critiques. You're going to do a lot of community referrals. So you're going to get to know everything in the neighborhood. And that's kind of what the job is. So I looked at that and said, okay, well, you know, at least then I'm working with resumes and things like that. So that's probably a step towards HR. So that's going to make a ton of sense. So let me put my hat in the ring and go for it. And I totally remember showing up to that interview, and it was a group interview. And I was the least qualified person there because everybody was going around the table. It's like, oh, I've done this for employment. I've done that for employment. There's internal candidates in front of me. And I'm like, oh boy, this is bad news for me. And we had to give a presentation that we had to create with a partner, and two people that were internal were partnered together and had pre-built presentations. And I'm like, how are you supposed to compete against this? And just like 2 minutes before we went up for our presentation, my partner was just like, I can't do this. I can't go up in front of everybody and do a presentation. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, no, you have to come up, just like say your name, do a brief introduction. I'll take care of the rest. And yeah, I did the presentation, kind of worked out well, did the one-on-one afterwards, made a few jokes, which seemed to land pretty well. I remember it. Yeah. I talked a little bit about like enjoying hockey in my interview because I'm a big Ottawa Senators fan and I'm surrounded by Leafs fans. So they mocked me for it during the interview. But ultimately it ended up working. And like, I worked really hard for that interview. Like I studied absolutely everything and knew it really well, but they liked me enough that they gave me a shot. And they knew they were taking a little bit of a gamble, but I like to think the gamble kind of worked for them too. Yeah. And so I just kind of got this job and I said, okay, let's just do it. I'll keep my eyes open. I'll apply to HR when like the position comes up, and I'll keep doing that. So keep towards my goal. And I was working for the Y at this point. And I all of a sudden, I think 6 months there, a position opened up in HR with the Y. And I was like, okay, well, let me apply. I didn't actually get that job, even though I was internal. they basically just told me I'd be bored with it. And I was like, okay. And you're just like, would I be bored with it? Because it's what I want to do and where I want to go. But slowly what ended up happening is like, I realized that I actually like thoroughly enjoyed doing my job. And I kind of just started setting goals for myself where it was, okay, so, you're starting off in this like really basic role, but like I could see the kind of the people above me. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get there. So it was, I think, pretty much every year and a half, I kind of had a little bit of whether it was a promotion or like a change in job. So I changed from doing like really basic stuff to doing like full case management. So that's when you like see people, multiple appointments, you're taking notes. It's almost like going to see like a doctor or a counselor kind of thing. And not that important, but something along those lines. So I did that. Did that for about a year and a half, and then there was this new program that came out where you're working with employers and we were giving out training subsidies for them. So I took over that program. So all of a sudden I had like a program where I was dealing with like $350,000 budget. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Yeah, me thinking that's a big budget at one point in time. And then I kind of just got lucky and ended up at McMaster because I saw the posting go up and the manager at the time was relatively new to her position. And I think she just saw that life science degree. And I always mean to go back and ask her, it's like, why did you take me? Because I was still relatively young at that point in time because I've only been out of school like now 10 years. So I guess I would have been out like 6 years at that point. But yeah, she must have saw that life science degree and was like, yeah, we could probably take a little chance here. But all throughout, it's just like basically I just kind of set my goals and my sights on something. And I always knew that, if I was going to stay in Hamilton, I was going to come back to McMaster at some point. And I had applied to different programs. Like I applied to engineering, I applied to when biomedical discovery and commercialization opened at McMaster, I applied to that.
Like to do the program or to help do like the HR for it?
Yeah, to do the program.
Right.
So like they do the same thing where they do like co-op positions. So I was going to see if I can do that and still talking to students and stuff like that. So yeah, I just got really lucky that I was able to come back to McMaster, and it was just one of those like timing things. It kind of worked out. They were in the right need. The right person was in charge. So yeah, and that really just kind of solidified my spot at McMaster, which it's where I want to be. And I'm working with the demographic that I like. So I like talking to the students. People don't realize, I guess when they come talk to me, they don't realize that I was probably equally as lost as them or more lost than them at some point. So it really does give me a little bit of perspective when I talk to students too, because I saw it, I went through it, but at the same time now I have all the extra tools that I've picked up along the way to make sure that people don't make the same mistakes that I did. So it is really quite helpful.
I'm so glad we talked to you right now because I feel like I'm very much in that transition stage of I just finished my undergrad and don't want to continue down the life science path. So your story is super encouraging, I think.
Hopefully.
But yeah. Yeah. As life science majors, I don't think I have a good grasp of what HR and organizational psychology and I think you mentioned industrial something is. So if you could explain a little bit about what those are, that would be great.
Yeah, and it's really where you find them a lot of times working is in what we call total rewards in HR. So it's this big fancy term for how do you essentially compensate employees so that we can get the best out of them. Right. And when we're thinking about total rewards, like that's things like planning, do you plan a pension program? Do you do health benefits? Do you pay people more or less? I'm hoping you never pay people less. I'm a big fan of everybody getting paid. So, but it's trying to find out those things. And, like, do we do things like company barbecues? Do you do, what I mean? Like it's basically like fun things to get people active and engaged with their work, or do we volunteer, or do we volunteer as a group, give them individual opportunities? So it's trying to find different ways to engage people, and then hopefully from that they like their work atmosphere, they want to stay, they want to grow with the organization. So you're really trying to cut down a lot of like people coming in and leaving quickly, because it's really expensive to hire new people and train new people. So that's really your goal, is to come up with like the right package, the right mix of things so that it works for you as a company. And at the same time, I mean, you always have to look at the people above and your CEOs and stuff like that, and they want to make sure that they're saving all their money. So yeah, I mean, that's the part I guess I now thinking about it, I would have a harder time with is like, how can we cut our costs and like get people engaged at the same time? Because I've definitely fallen too far to the other side where I'm just like, let's just make sure everybody's happy at kind of whatever cost.
Yeah, given that you've worked so much, with students and with our demographic, and that a lot of our listeners are, just coming out of high school or just graduating university, we were wondering if you could tell us about some common concerns that you see among people our age and kind of what advice you would give to kind of ease those concerns.
Yeah. And I think, if I really were to think about it, it's really not having like a large enough view of kind of what's out there. And I don't put that like it's not a fault of any students coming into the programs or of that age demographic. It's just we just don't talk about those things early enough. So what ends up happening is we find like, I see a lot of students that come in and like maybe it's just that they want to do one or two different things, right? Like, well, I guess I'll pick on the life sciences here, and it's perfectly okay. But like, they want to come in, they want to do research or medicine, right? And it's just like those are two things that we know about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what ends up happening is there's all this pressure from kind of everybody around them at the same time, even just like other students, that it's just like, oh yeah, like I'm doing research or I want to do research, I want to do medicine. And it's just kind of like they kind of just push each other, but don't help each other always expand their view of the world. So it's one of those things that, I mean, it's definitely manageable in undergrad to kind of start seeing those things. But what it requires is like breaking out of your shell a little bit. It's joining those clubs, those organizations, those groups, even though it's just those things that, weren't cool in high school, but now you get to do them at university. And it's just to see like what else is out there and just going to interact with people, because then it's going to help kind of broaden that view of what's out there. And it's really starting to stick yourself in like uncomfortable situations, taking summer jobs that you're just like, I don't really know if I would like this, but I'm a big fan of just going out and like experiencing things for the sake of experiencing them, because it usually tells us like at bare minimum one of two things, where it's just like, I really enjoyed this or I really hated this. And you learn a lot from both. And especially if we're doing something like, like a summer job, and you kind of put yourself out there and you realize over 4 months that you're just like, this was literally the worst thing I've ever done. It's like, I'm super happy because you're never going to go touch that again. So it's really just trying to figure out like, yeah, how do we deal with that future, and how do we navigate that it's okay to be uncertain about your future and just kind of run with it. And I don't know, that's especially if you have that personality type where it's like, you got to be a planner. Yeah, it's a very hard thing to reconcile, where I'm just saying like, don't worry about it. Just kind of go out, have some fun, see where it starts pulling you. But I think that's one of those big challenges that I see especially with the undergrads, where it's just like, yeah, I feel like I can only be one of 3 things or one of 4 things. And maybe the other thing is just come talk to like a career advisor too. That's my subtle plug. But yeah, you come talk to one of us, and it's just like, you know what, we're not going to judge whether or not you want to do one thing or another. But, if you just want to come in and say like, I just want to see what else is out there, it's like, we can absolutely take you through those exercises to go figure it out. So it's just broaden those expectations. And also, I mean, that's so many things. It's, you want to be happy, right? And we got to find out what those things are that make you happy. And I think sometimes we think about these big grand careers, and it's like they have like a name attached to them, a title attached to them, maybe a certain level of respect attached to them, maybe it's an income attached to them. But it's just like, are those the things that really make you happy? Or is it like just hanging out with your friends? Is it traveling? And it's just like, those are perfectly okay things to want to do. And we should be looking at careers that let you do those things. So, but yeah, I do think that's like the toughest thing to realize at that point. And it's not to say that you can't go off and do something big and grand, but there's also nothing wrong with just being that person in an office, right? Because if ultimately that makes you happy, then why not? Yeah, it's kind of a really big, tough question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty broad question to answer, so fair enough. And I think like the one advice that we give consistently on the podcast is to do that exploring and kind of try out different options. So I'm glad that it's been further validated by someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
Like, I can't stress it enough. I'm glad you guys have this podcast, but it's just like, all I can tell anybody is just go and explore. And I think university and undergrad is the time to do it for sure. Because whether you're talking to somebody who's just coming into the program, or maybe talking to somebody who's graduated from a program, I think they'll tell you that there's no experience quite like the undergrad experience, where it's like you can just kind of go out there, you can literally go talk to anybody, and chances are somebody will listen to you. You can make all sorts of different connections. All I can say is really just take advantage of those opportunities, and also remember that you don't necessarily peak at the undergrad point.
We certainly hope you don't.
I would say, like probably kind of the most fun I've had was actually when all my friends started earning a salary, and we were all earning kind of a little bit of money for like the first time in our lives. Because we had the opportunity, we hadn't finally had the means to go like do fun things, right? So it's kind of like a different transition once you kind of leave school, and yeah, you can all of a sudden just do a little bit more. Whether that's you take a trip, or you can actually go out to dinner and go to some place that's a little bit nicer. You can get that nicer pizza finally. It's just like it's kind of one of those things that I say keep looking forward to.
Yeah, buy a Roomba.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can finally get one. So yeah, just keep looking forward to those things, and keep always looking for that next thing for you too. Especially when I talk about careers, I always recommend keep an eye open, because you never know what's going to come your way. So take advantage of the opportunities that come to you, and really just kind of put yourself in uncomfortable situations and see where it kind of takes you.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for joining us today and for chatting with us about your experiences.
Yeah, no problem.
If you would like to keep up to date with the McMaster Science Career and Cooperative Education Office, you can follow them on Instagram using @McMaster SCCE or the link in the show notes. You can also visit their website listed below. For McMaster Science students, they are having drop-in hours as well as a live chat from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Mondays through Fridays. So go and check it out. So we wanted to take this moment to tell you about our Patreon. We're raising funds in order to help pay for our podcast hosting service, equipment upgrades, and our own website. If you head over to patreon.com/soyougotalifescidedegree, you can view our 3 membership levels and the cool perks that come with them. For $1 a month, you can access bonus minicasts, which are 5 to 10 minute episodes where we talk about the interesting shenanigans in our lives, including weird animal discoveries like the truth behind blobfish. To check out this and our other perks, click on over to patreon.com/soyougotalifescidedegree.
So what are your thoughts, Lisa?
I thought it was good. I think he definitely has a voice for radio. Like at some points while we were listening to him, I just kind of turned to my left and pretended like I was listening to a podcast, and it felt very much like the case. I also think that in a weird way, his voice doesn't necessarily match what he looks like, if that makes any sense. Like he if you see him, he looks like a very friendly, approachable guy, but his voice sounds like very like, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm on a podcast saying things. I don't know. but not in a bad way. It was nice. Yeah.
Okay, sure. I think like the prerequisite qualification to being a career counselor is just making everyone around you feel very comfortable.
Yeah,
and I think he did that well.
You would think, but
oh no.
Wait, sorry. That was not a diss on Jared. That was a diss on
some of your past experience.
With a separate office, not the SCCE at McMaster, but a separate office at McMaster. Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was a good interview.
Mm-hmm.
Also, to the listeners, I want to apologize for correcting Jared that the Y means the YMCA, because apparently I've been notified by my co-host that the formerly YMCA now wants to rebrand as the Y. So the correct term is the Y, but
Yeah, I think they're trying to make it more inclusive because YMCA is like Young Men's Christian Association.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So
They could have just, like, you know what? They should have just like changed the words but kept the acronym the same. Like they should have they should have been like, we need to find another name that has like the acronym YMCA.
I think that'd be too confusing.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah, good on them on trying to improve a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, wow, I did not know it stood for that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've told you before. But also the Y does actually offer some great services. Like they do run a lot of cool programs.
Yeah. I always assumed the Y stood for like youth something. Youth, I don't know. I never. Wow, you learn.
Yeah.
In more substantial discussion topics, what do you got?
I think this has come up in our PhD episode and then again with Jared now. I don't actually understand how expensive it is to hire and train someone new.
Yeah. I don't know what they mean in terms of expense. Maybe they're talking about in terms of time. Like it takes the time of your existing employees to interview people, or it takes time to train someone. So you're like kind of like paying for the time of that person who's training the newbie, but then you're also paying the newbie to be trained. So maybe they mean in terms of it that way.
Right.
I can't imagine there's many like actual like things you have to buy when you train someone.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's actual things you have to buy. I think it's in terms of wages.
Yeah.
I'm trying to Google and see if there's like anything interesting here. Oh, okay. So some common hiring costs are an external hiring team. So usually if you're a small company, you have to hire like a recruiter or something like that. Or you can have an internal HR department.
Yeah.
Career events, so putting on an event, job board fees,
background
checks, and then onboard and training.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't think about. Yeah, I guess you do have to pay to post on Indeed and stuff. I didn't know about that. I thought it was free.
Yeah, so on onboarding, it says when you hire someone new, they most likely won't be fully productive on their first day of work. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, as confirmed by research, it will take 8 to 26 weeks for an employee to achieve full productivity. Yeah.
That just makes me chuckle. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think it's because when they say that, like, it's like you're talking about them like they're a plant. Like,
full harvest.
Yeah, to fully take root into the soil.
Yeah. But yeah, basically you're just like losing money on that entire time.
Makes sense.
Yeah, in the article, this is a quote of some of the research, and it says an average company loses anywhere between 1 and 2.5% of their total revenue on the time it takes to bring a new hire up to speed.
A single new hire?
That sounds really
seems
large.
Excessively high.
Yeah.
Maybe they mean for new hiring in general?
Oh, yeah, probably. I don't know. It's phrased as one new hire, but that sounds very large for one new hire. And also, it doesn't mention anything about the size of the company. So, that's confusing. But yeah, you should take a look at the study itself or what it's linking, because we're obviously not super knowledgeable at this. So we just Googled it. Yeah, in this article that we're going to link in the show notes, it claims that for a company that's 0 to 500 people, it costs on average $7,645 to onboard them and hire them. But the article also shows some other studies that show it's around like $4,000 to hire an employee. And replacing someone can cost you up to 50 to 60% of their annual salary. And apparently, if you're replacing someone instead of filling a new position, stakes get even higher. So replacing someone can cost you up to 50 to 60% of their annual salary. And it just says that turnover can be quite costly, summing up to a total of 90 to 200% of an employee's annual salary. I'm not entirely sure how that adds up. Please do your own research, even though we will link this.
Yeah, I mean, take this all with a grain of salt. I think this is just one article on the internet, but
yeah, take it with a salt shaker, not just a grain.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's actually interesting because I actually had no proximate numbers whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to note. Because if you remember back in the PhD episode, we were talking about how it might be more worth it for companies to hire like master's students over PhD students and stuff like that. I think we ultimately cut that from the discussion, actually, but it's interesting to think about in terms of numbers.
Right. This has been another episode of So You Got a Life Sci Degree with Jared Kunar about being the Career Development and Relationship Manager at the McMaster SCCE. We want to give special thanks to our crew of lovely patrons, including our Little Leaf patrons Naeem, Daniil, Shafiq, and Shamima, and our fantastic foliage patron, Stephanie. If you would like to become a supporter of this podcast, you can visit our Patreon at patreon.com/soyougotalifescidegree. You can also rate us on Apple Podcasts,